All right, we've got 3 minutes. All right, Dan, you're the big picture right now. Why did this constantly shift?
So are you on grid view?
I was, but now I'm not.
Yeah, I know. I
But I
was
will.
too.
All right, there we go.
Hi, Jen.
Morning.
Oh. All right, we're going to start on time today. People have got stuff to do, so.
That's a nice cup of coffee. Pretty big there. I like it.
Did you see? Actually, it's my Board of Education mug.
I'm already ripped through my first cup, so.
Oh, no, not me. We're getting there, though. I'm trying my best. It's kind of like 2 cups of coffee in one shot.
Hey, Kathy, Mike Hagedorn checking in.
Good morning. All right, call to order. Mr. Mannix, would you be kind enough to say the Pledge of Allegiance?
Oh, you're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the Republic, for which
Republic
it
which
stands,
stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And justice for all.
Thank you. Joanne, may I please have a roll call vote?
Douglas
Sorry,
Beebe,
a roll call
Here.
Kathy Buckley,
here.
Michael Hagedorn,
Here.
Ed Marin, Christopher Michaud,
Here.
Crystal Palmer,
Here.
Nicole Puport,
Here.
Mark Sand,
Here.
Pauline Stone.
All right. Make it resolved that the superintendent of schools recommends to the Board of Education to approve the agenda. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
That was you, Mark?
Yes.
I'll second Mike
May I have a
Hagedorn.
second, please?
Click the name on there.
Mike seconded it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions or discussion concerning the agenda?
No.
Seeing that there's, thank you. Seeing that there's none, may I have an all in favor?
Aye.
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 Noes? Abstains? Resolution passes. May it be resolved that the superintendent of schools recommends to the Board of Education to approve the following minutes. May I have a motion, please?
Motion. Crystal.
Motion by Nicole. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Chris. Sorry, Crystal.
Okay.
All right. Do you guys have any questions or discussion concerning the minutes?
No.
No.
All right, excellent. May I have an all in favor, please?
Aye.
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 Okay, excellent. Noes, abstains? Resolution passes. May it be resolved that the Board of Education of Beekmantown Central School District cast one vote for each of the 5 seats vacant on the Clinton, Essex, Warren, Washington Board of Cooperative Educational Services, Champlain Valley Educational Services Board. The people that are running are Lisa Boise, Ed Marin, Thomas McCabe, and Bruce Murdoch, and that leaves them with 1 vacant seat. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Um,
Go ahead,
All right,
Mike.
I'll
You have a
that-
second
question?
Mike Hagedorn.
Okay, so I've got Mark Sand with the motion and Mike Hagedorn with a second.
Correct.
Any question or discussion?
Do we have,
No.
what do we do to the vacant seats? Do we have a write-in, or is that up to any school district at that point? Or how do they operate?
So this.
Oh, hey, Ed.
Yeah, hi. So that's been a tough one as far as seats on CVS, the vacant ones. Sometimes we've added ad hoc person from any district who's willing to participate. So if anybody is interested, you're welcome to put your name in, I guess.
Ed, how many people are on the board?
Total usually it's 15. And right now we have less. We have less.
Okay.
I mean, it covers a pretty wide area, you know. So
So we do we vote individually on these people, Joanne? Ed? We have to say like we have to say so we can move the list
Yes.
and vote one vote for the list.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do we have any questions or discussion concerning this? Would we like to vote yes or no for all people on the list?
I move the list.
Thank you.
I second that.
Okay, so we've got Ed to move the list. We've got Crystal to second. May I have an all in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, okay, thank you. Any noes, abstains? Resolution passes. Congratulations, Ed, Lisa, Thomas, and Bruce.
Thank you for serving once again, Ed.
My pleasure. Thank you.
May it be resolved that the Board of Education of Beekmantown Central District vote to approve or disapprove the tentative administrative budget in the amount of $6,046,253 total expenditure budget of the Clinton, Essex, Warren, Washington Board of Cooperative Educational Services for the year of 2020-21. May I have a motion, please?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Ed. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nicole. Oh, Nicole's mic is off, but she raises her hand.
Cool.
Okay, so I've got Ed is the motion, Nicole is the second. Do we have any questions or discussion concerning their budget?
Kathy, is it to approve it or disapprove it?
Um, this is why I always get confused on this resolution. Don't we need to have a discussion before we can actually read it the right way?
I think she's asking about the motion.
Right. Well, the emotion, if the motion says to approve / disapprove.
Oh, okay.
So I think we need to have the discussion to decide whether we are going to approve or disapprove. I'll reread the resolution with the appropriate word. Does that make sense? Is that the right way to do it? And then we'll go through and do our vote.
Kathy, I would read it.
Am I-
I would, before the discussion, I would read it with one of the words in, like to approve it, and then have discussion. And then if after the discussion,
Okay.
I think that's the way I would do it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. Then let's make it simple. We'll say that we
I'll amend my motion to motion to approve.
okay, excellent. That's what I was going to suggest. All right, so I'll read it correctly. May it be resolved that the Board of Education of Beekmantown Central School District votes to approve the tentative administrative budget in the amount of $6,046,253, total expenditure budget of the Clinton, Essex, Warren, Washington Board of Cooperative Educational Services for the school year 2020-21. Ed amended the motion. Nicole, you still second? Okay. All right. I would like to start the discussion with what is meant by tentative. Is anybody?
Not,
I don't.
Ed, as a board member, do you want to take that?
No. Go. Well, I don't remember ever using the word tentative before when we were voting for this, but I think does it have to do with the issues governor situation right now on the state?
I don't think it does have to do with the issues with the state, because I haven't been told that. If I've asked a question about reworking the budget for BOCES, and I think they did take a little bit. They did modify a little bit based on health insurance premiums, but I'm not sure that there will be any reduction in that. If we lose 15%, like the governor says 20%, we might lose 20% in a couple of days. I don't know that BOCES will make any corresponding adjustments. I haven't been told that they will.
To be honest, I'm not sure how that works directly. I know that everything that they do is tentative based on their agreements with the county, and also with like negotiations with the land that they've recently adjusted for replacing the rent that they pay right now for the ICS, and they're purchasing the land. So a lot of those things are tentative based on what they've negotiated, which is really, really good pricing. But I don't know. I don't know the specifics on that, Dan. To be honest with you, I don't remember why the word tentative is there.
Okay, because I will say that I have, I'm very, very concerned, with our own budget. And what I noticed when I was going through BOCES budget is mid-year, they did a pretty significant increase or revision in their budget. And the lines for next year, a majority of their lines are also increased above their revision from mid-year. So when I see the word tentative, I'm expecting them to revise it again, and they never give. I mean, it always goes up; it never goes down.
Yeah.
So I'm really
but-
concerned.
Well, yeah, I mean that makes sense. But remember that whatever gets adjusted and doesn't get used, it comes back to the districts. I mean, it's not like they don't function like us. Well, they function like us in that respect, where the money that comes to them, whatever doesn't get used, goes back to the districts anyway. And any expense that we have with respect to how they bill, I mean, we get 56% on what is it, 56 on the dollar because it's BOCES aid. Now, the cost of the budget is the dollar budget, but it's also, you have to remember that you get a big portion of that back every year.
So we that's a little bit of a misnomer. So any kind of special ed cost, we don't receive aid on that, and we don't. I know regularly it's quoted that we receive, our BOCES aid, and our BOCES aid rate is 56% or whatever the BOCES aid rate is, and it fluctuates. But that isn't based on the whole budget. So, for instance, a salary. If somebody's making 62,000, which is, there's people there making $62,000,
right?
We'll receive aid on the first, I think it's 35,000 of that. Anything over that, we don't receive aid on. So there's a lot of portions of a lot of salaries which we don't receive aid on. So
that's
out of
true.
Out of our whole bill, we do receive money back at that around that rate Ed quoted. But it's not on our whole. It's not on our whole expenditure. It's on a portion of our expenditures, a large portion of our expenditures.
On the majority of it, because the majority of it is students.
Well, the student cost is calculated based on adding equipment, material, supplies, and salaries. So it's not always. It's not just a student cost.
Well, of course, but just like us, the ratio of student cost to admin and equipment is pretty high, right? That's how the institutions run. All of
Did you say just like us, the ratio of
like us, the majority of the portion is the education part with students, right? The admin budget is not the high part.
I'm not sure what your statement is, so I can't confirm it. I know that the majority of our costs go to personnel. 80% of our costs is personnel. A portion of that we have less than. We'll have the number up when we do our budget, but it's always significantly less than 10% of our budget is admin. But the way they calculate their admin by law is different than the way we calculate our admin.
Right now. No, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right, because when I was going through the lines of their budget, I feel comfortable with the lines when you know specifically what the dollar is going to. But when you see a line that says other salaries and it's triple or quadruple what it was last year, it's really concerning. Knowing that our personal district is going through a huge financial crisis because of this health issue. I want to know what they mean by other salaries.
Well, that's been the driver. From what I see, the driver has been the health insurance. Has been the spikes. I will say that since Mark got there and Eric, obviously, they've been doing a good job of curtailing costs or trying to curtail costs, particularly as much as they can. And the health insurance has been a serious issue, of course, right? And the health insurance is, yeah, right. The health insurance is part of that admin budget. They don't, it's not separated out. So, we have to be careful when we see the admin budget. It includes the health insurance in that.
It does include the health insurance, and I agree with what Ed is saying, and I agree with what Kathy's saying. I have a huge concern for our budget. I have a huge concern from what I hear from our governor. You never know whether you never know whether it's politics or what, but we certainly know that we are in an economic crisis. And I do worry that school districts around here, around the state, around the country, are going to have, I'm going to call it, over the next couple of years, a lot of pain and reductions. I would be dismayed if that if we were reducing a lot of our staff or whatever. And it's a big if. It depends on a lot of different numbers. And we didn't have that equal distribution with our partners over at CVES.
Of course.
I brought that up before, and I was turned down. And then it came back, and they think they cut like 2% off one of the lines, which is significant. But I think we, right now we're at flat, no increase in state aid this year with a 2 point something percent. We're going out to the taxpayers. Hopefully that passes. But then we also have the governor saying every single day, expect a monster cut to your state aid allocation. And if we have that big cut and BOCES has and I'm not saying they have this, I'm not saying this at all, but if they have the mindset, well, the budget was passed, it's in the budget, that would be beyond frustrating.
Well, if we go by history, the last time we had a serious budget issue in the area, they cut like over 100 jobs. So
I was there. I was doing the cutting.
Well, right. Okay. So how many jobs were there? About 120, 100.
I remember 80. It was a lot, Ed. It was a lot.
Yeah. So the mindset isn't like we're going to live high on the hog and everybody else is going to suffer. They suffer with everybody because they're dependent on us.
As a board member, are you saying that you would anticipate some type of equal a shared pain, and that shared pain alleviates some of the pain to the district? If BOCES takes off 5%, we got to take off 20%. That really means we're taking off probably, I'm just guessing here, but like we're taking off 25%.
Right. Yeah. The discussions that we've had at our board meetings has been one of significant concern, just like we have had, about how we might have to handle or manage the same scenario that was when you were there, cutting significant amount of staff. So that's a real reality. And you probably had that conversation with Eric as well.
No, I mean, I had a conversation about, are you going to modify the budget based on our state aid runs were modified, right?
Right.
We went from the number you saw on the board was like, I think, 900,000 to 1.4 million.
Sure.
So that was a big cut. And I was hoping to see some type of realization of that equal distribution. And it wasn't there for whatever reason. But there was a reduction. I also worry that there's a new BOCES billing mechanism where they're averaging your enrollment over the last 5 years, and you get billed that much regardless of how many kids are sent to BOCES. And I worry about whether two things. I worry about whether we're going to be able to send that many kids because, if we don't have any money, there's a lot of things we can't do. But then I also worry about if sending kids to BOCES is going to be the right thing to do, because I'm not sure that they're going to be able to have the hours, the in-person, whatever they call them, hours, so that kids can have their CTE certification if we are going to have a second wave throughout the first part of next year. I'll give you an example. Colorado just closed all schools until January 1st. Like if we had to pay $1 million and not receive any of that back, and our kids didn't receive the education or weren't able to graduate or get any credits and pay the money,
sure.
that would be really, really difficult.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And that's a shared sentiment across all the board members that represent the districts on the BOCES board. And all of us have that exact problem. We have the same concern. And by default, we control those budgets at BOCES as well. So everything you're talking about is the same sentiment and concerns that we all have on that board.
So what is that? What is that? I'm not going to call it a promise, but what is that sentiment, or what is the safety net for school districts as we deal with so there's two things. It's not all gloom and doom, right? The federal government could come in and say, hey, here's X billion dollars, New York State, and they sprinkle it across all districts, and we receive our fair proportion of that, and life is okay for a year. And there's other things that can happen too. Like we're not spending a lot of money right now heating the building because there's nobody there.
Right.
So we could have a larger surplus at the end of this year and carry that over, which could offset some costs. So it's not all gloom and doom. But if in fact the governor comes in 5 days or 35 days and says, hey, revenues are down $20 billion, we have to cut 25% of that aid. So that's another $4 million that you need to cut, which would be 40 positions, 50 positions, 60 positions. What is the sentiment from the BOCES board, and how are they going to make equal adjustments so that whole burden isn't just on Beekmantown when we have millions of dollars going millions of dollars going to BOCES?
Well, the burden is shared proportionally by every school district, and it's shared by how many students participate. So if you send more kids from your district to BOCES, then your percentage obviously is higher. So we have the safety net that if we choose to, by school start, and because we're worried about January or whatever, that if we don't send as many students, then we get that money back.
No.
Yes. Whatever we don't spend with enrollment, we get that money back.
So the way BOCES changed the billing, I think a year ago, 2 years ago, where they average our 5-year enrollment, and that if we send less, let's say our average 5-year enrollment is 80 kids, 79 kids. That might be the number. It's somewhere in that area. We're going to get billed for that. If we send 50 kids, like let's just say it was a good year. If we send 50 kids this year, it goes into our average in subsequent years, but we're still being billed that X amount. It doesn't adjust based on the number of kids we send.
That's only for CV Tech.
Yes, that's for CV Tech, correct. So, and I bring up only CV Tech because I think we only send a couple kids to the special ed program. Thanks, Jen.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. And I don't know how that affects, obviously if it's averaged, it'll affect our return on subsequent years if it's averaged over more years, but we'll still get a portion back. There's no way that we would send more kids or less kids and the average doesn't affect us directly. It's not. I know that it's averaged to make the budgeting cycle easier to assess.
Right.
Because one of the problems there is when they make an assumption based on what the counselors tell you are going to enroll, and then they don't enroll, then it makes it harder to run a budget. But at the end of the day, every time that happened, typically they would return some of the money or all the money. Every student that doesn't get enrolled, the money comes back. So frankly, I'm not really sure how the 5-year averaging affects that, Dan. That's something we'd have to discuss with Eric, but I can't see the board accepting a district really getting hammered because the 5 averaging is going to affect them that way. Right. And I will say that in a year of concern like ours right now, because of the 56% aid, sending a kid to CV Tech is actually cheaper than what it costs us. So that actually helps us budgetarily up until the point where our overhead starts kicking in, right?
When you say right to me, it puts me in an awkward position because our bills are going to be our bills, and every time our bills are going to be our bills. So with the 5-year cost averaging, if we send 50 kids, we won't receive a proportion of 30 kids, their $12,000 or $11,000 back. We won't. But our costs are our costs. So if we send a student to CVES, if we send 85 kids to CVES, we don't have a reduction in cost. I guess if we tried to send everybody to CVES and didn't need any educators at Beekmantown, I'm not quite sure how that.
No. Just on a conventional year, the cost to send a student to CVS is with the state aid is cheaper than it is on a per student basis at our district. We've seen that in every budget that we've had.
But just so you guys, those kids, the 56% aid doesn't pertain to those kids because those are stackable kids. So we actually stack those kids.
You're talking of special. No.
Special ed. Right. The CV Tech is a separate issue, but the CVES kids, they're stackable. So that 56% doesn't come into play.
Right. For no aid for special ed kids.
Right.
But
we only said we only send a couple of kids to special ed.
We do send. So
yes.
Sorry, maybe Jen's trying to clarify what our conversation is about. So
okay. So the majority of our kids go to CV Tech, correct?
The majority of our kids that attend BOCES go to CV Tech. The vast majority.
And those students, we get 56% aid on those students.
Well, Ed, you use that number. I already talked about that a little bit. So,
okay. Well, it's about that.
We receive let's just call it 50% of the amount we receive back. Let's just say, just for a round number, easy to work with.
All right. Okay. So this is more the majority of our kids that go to CVS go to CV Tech. We get half of it back. The net cost of a student for us to educate at Beekmantown at our school district is more expensive than when we send them to CV Tech.
That BOCES cost is wrapped into the net cost. It's not, they're not carved out. So that when this whole admin budget we just approved, that's part of our cost for approved purple expenditure.
Yes.
So you can't say BOCES is less expensive than Beekmantown because those costs are all wrapped into the cost for the kid that doesn't go to BOCES.
But even with the cost, when you look at the breakdown of the budget for our district, every year, when you look at the cost per student basis, just like a regular overheads, but it is more cost. It is just fact. It's just cheaper to send a kid to CV Tech than it is to our school district. Now, I'm not saying that we do that, but I am saying that we have to be careful that we don't increase our cost as a whole because suddenly we choose not to send kids to CV Tech.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was saying that. I think what I was saying was there's on our doorstep is a lot of fiscal pain. And I was actually advocating for, and I think you said that the board, you said the board would, I don't want to misquote you, but you said the board was aware of the fiscal pain and would make any adjustments that would help offset or equalize maybe the pain that districts would be feeling, so that it's not that whole burden isn't on the shoulders of the individual district, and that's where what my point was.
Yeah, no, exactly, and we have to, because all the money the CVS gets comes from all the board members, the districts that are there at the table who are going through this serious pain. So just like when you were there, the layoffs happened because they needed to,
Yep. Mr. King and Rachel, they went through their budget and they looked at everything and yeah, there was a lot of people that had to be laid off, reduced for sure.
Yeah. We have control over that. And certainly, Jen and all the other business officials communicate with Eric. Jen, have you what conversation tone have you had with Eric? I know that, has he talked to you at all about his concern about the budget, just like us?
We had a business officials meeting last week that Eric participated in. Everybody has the same concerns. Everybody's in a lot of financial stress right now, including the BOCES. And did he specifically talk about what that looks like to the other? I know the rest of the business managers were not happy that the BOCES cuts equaled. I think Christine from Plattsburgh continued to say $4,000. That's all you got me, Eric. $4,000. So we're looking at, $2.5 million cut, and the portion that came back from BOCES was 15,000. So it was very disproportional compared to what we're looking at as to what they cut. I think that was the tone we got from all the business officials.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that all the school districts are cutting budget, and you're thinking that as a whole, CVS's overall cut isn't as aggressive as everybody else's, because everybody's going to be less because we're only a small portion of the entire budget, right?
Well, everybody's portion is different comparative to what
Yes.
services they have.
Based on the services and the size of the district, right?
Right. But proportionately, we're looking at much larger. It feels and looks as if we're looking at much larger cuts than what BOCES cut.
Yeah, we could do the math on that. I mean, I don't think Jen's misstating that, and I don't think the lady from Plattsburgh was misstating that to Eric. I didn't know that conversation happened, but that's what I was talking about, that shared proportion. If BOCES is cutting 2%, but we're cutting 12%, and again, I'm just using numbers. I'm just throwing numbers out.
Sure.
I'm not giving you a data point right now. Then that's the issue that doesn't sit well with.
Yeah. I think they need to share the pain the same way we do, obviously, right? No question about it. So is that why the word tentative is there, you think? Because if we agree on something tentative, then are we not agreeing on it completely? How does that work?
So Kathy, you mentioned that the budget you saw budgets going up last year. Is that right? You said, Kathy?
When I went through and read their budget, almost every category, I mean, there were a few that had an overall decrease, but almost every category had an increase. And some of them were significant. One section increased almost a little over $200,000. It almost doubled. And I'm really concerned. To me, when I look at $200,000, I realize that there's value on BOCES does. I'm not trying to diminish them in the least, but $200,000 is a lot of positions in our district. So when I look at their lines, I may be looking at pennies compared to their overall budget, but it really concerns me because I mean, my goal is that our districts stay whole.
Was that the health insurance? Because that's usually the one that was.
That might be that was the one that had a $212,000 category for other salaries, where I have no idea what other salaries are, and there were no other salaries in the previous year or the revised line. So I mean,
well,
I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the impact.
That number out there. You got to be careful when you throw that number out there, not knowing what it is, because
exactly, that's what I'm saying. I don't know why it's there. I don't know what it means, but I do know that's a lot of positions in our district. So,
but if you mention that, and now you kind of give the impression that it's salaries when you're not sure,
no, it's labeled other salaries.
Okay, well, that's something.
So I'm using their term.
Did you look into it then?
I read it last night. I have no way of researching I read their budget, but I have no way of researching, or they didn't define what other salaries are. So I don't know what it is.
Well, we have to be careful because every year, every line item goes up, just like ours. And if we look at theirs, and we don't like the fact that some of the line items go up, but then in the same breath, we're having to look at our community members and then defend, oh yes, our line items go up, based on the tax cap. We can't have it both ways. You can't complain that one service is going up when we're increasing our budget as well on a conceptual basis. Now, all of us are going to have a reduction in budget because, of course, we're all going to be feeling this pain, right? But just on principle, to flat out say that we don't like the line items going up when our line items go up as well, we have to be careful with that, is all I'm saying.
Right. I do understand that. But when we have a concern of a possible, $6, $8, $12 million cut in our own personal district, every line makes a difference. So when I see that $212, of which might be essential, I just don't know what that particular line represents other than the label that they put on it.
Okay,
So
so yeah,
to me, it's that we're just talking about one category and maybe about, I think there was maybe 8 different categories. I'm just throwing a number. I don't have it in front of me right now. I read it. So, knowing that our lines are, our budget lines are in jeopardy and that chances are we're going to have drastic cuts, I have grave concern when I see a majority of their categories with increases that are substantial. It wasn't just, a 300 or a 5,000 increase. A majority of them are substantial.
it's a
And
big budget like ours. Again, so we have to be careful with what we say, because if we look at a multi-million-dollar budget increase in our budget, well, we've got a $40 million budget. Of course, it's going to be substantial. So you're not going to look at a line item and go, it should be $1,000 when it's going to be higher, right? So we need to have everything based on context.
all right, here's my other question. We keep tossing around the, like, for example, I'll use that 56% reimbursement rate,
Okay.
or aidable. What guarantee do we have that that number is going to stay the same?
It's been like that for years and years.
Right, but we're in a nationwide fiscal crisis. Is there any guarantee that that number is going to remain the same, or is there an opportunity that that reimbursement rate may change?
That's based on our WADA. I don't think it's the percentage. I think is Jen, I don't know if you can step, but I think it's based on the Arwada. That's based on schools and in our percent low income and all that. I don't think BOCES doesn't control that. The state controls that.
Correct. The state sets the rate. Unless the state were to change that, which Cuomo wanted that completely gone.
Right.
He wanted the aid to go away completely. That's why he had foundation aid changed originally. But
Right.
As of right now, it went back to the way it was previously. So
Jen, is there any fear amongst the other business management that may be abolished within the next year or two?
well, Cuomo wants BOCES aid gone. Yes, that is an accurate statement. Now, whether he gets his wish, I really don't know. But that was his first proposal this year, was BOCES aid was gone. So really it comes from the state. I know they will lobby against it. I that's what I've heard anyway, but whether that happens or not, I can't say for sure.
All right, and here's my third question. As a school district, what right do we have, being that we don't know how our personal budget is going to be impacted? What right do we have to amend our agreement to CV Tech's budget? Like, if we vote today to approve and we find out a month from now that we are cutting $12 million out of our budget, do we have a right to amend this resolution and say no?
So
I'm sorry,
Adam,
this is
I think
It sounds like because it's tentative, our resolution says tentatively approve, right?
right. Is it a tentative for them and they have the ability to increase or decrease, or is it tentative for us and we have the ability to change our vote from yes to no?
I think it's us, because
no,
we're saying,
I don't think it is. Sorry to interrupt, guys. I don't
Go
think it is. When I read it, it says district votes to approve or disapprove the tentative administrative budget. So it is more, I think the word, and Eric's not here, so I don't want to speak for Eric or Mark, but the tentative word is not for us to go back and change it.
Oh, the budget is tentative. The tentative budget. Yeah, I agree with you, Dan. Yeah.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions or input or? You have a question, Nicole?
I guess I'm kind of just wondering, we haven't even approved our budget, correct?
Correct.
So how can we approve anybody else's? How can any budgets be approved right now with the fact that everything remains up in the air? This is unprecedented. This is not something that we can, I mean, everything's a tentative, everything's tentative. My job,
No one
everything
has a crystal ball. Yeah.
there is no guarantee on anything. So how can we even approve anything and be set in stone when we don't know what's going to happen in a month? We don't know what we're getting. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I'm personally, I'm being affected. So I guess it's hard for me to say, let's approve something. And if we can't go back and change it, then I'm not okay with approving it.
Yeah.
Because at this point, there are too many factors, too many unknowns, and I'm not comfortable with the amount of unknowns right now.
You're absolutely right. But the BOCES budget is always approved at this time of year every year, and it's a problem because they run it differently than we do. And that has been your concern. There has been a concern for years because they have to have an approval before we do, so they can run numbers about how many people they're going to hire, right? I don't know if Jan wants to elaborate on that, but it's always been at this time of year.
Can I add to that? Can I add to what Ed's saying? But the fear factor of this year is that in the past, we have a general idea of what our budget looks like. So we know if CV Tech's budget is sustainable or not. This year, we have no idea. That's the difference.
And just like everything else, I mean, nothing's being set in stone right now because there's too many unknowns. So how is it? I mean, what are they doing to? I guess what is being done on their end to, as far as what's going on with the economic crisis? I mean, they have to know that schools are struggling with their budgets. So how do we? I guess maybe this is just not maybe this is a stupid question. I don't know, because this is my first time on the board. I just don't, why isn't there a concession with their budget, putting a hold on it or something, just like there is with everybody else? Because I don't know. Am I just being ridiculous? I don't know.
So Nicole,
No.
Go ahead, Kathy.
No, you're not being ridiculous in the least. I am a little frustrated with the fact that we have to make this decision and we have absolutely zero idea how our own personal school budget's going to look. And like I said before, I'm not trying to say that BOCES and CV Tech are insignificant. They're not. They're a valuable institution. But we have to make sure that our home district can run before we can make sure they can run, in my perspective. So their budget is on schedule where ours isn't. Usually by now, Nicole, we have a really good idea of where the budget's going. We're doing public hearings. We know how our next year is going to work. This year, I'm terrified for our district fiscally. I've been through severe budget cuts before, and it is absolutely awful. And I'm not just talking for staff, I'm talking for the impact on our students. I'm very, very concerned of what our home district is going to lose, and I feel very uncomfortable making the decision about BOCES when I don't know if we are going to, I don't want to say farewell, but we are going to even maintain what we already have. So your question is, as far as I'm concerned, is spot on, Nicole.
It almost fell off.
Part of the reason, Nicole, is the laws changed for. Kathy's right, 100% right, and I haven't heard many people say anything wrong at all. But part of the reason why is the state pushed back our budget adoption this year, but they didn't push back the BOCES budget adoptions. So this is always the time we do adopt the BOCES budget. And Kathy's right; we normally know exactly where we're going to stand, and it just is easier to have this the conversation of, yeah, this looks like a line here. We can make this work. What I was trying to point to was, what happens if we can't make it work? Ed was saying that there could be conversations at the board level, and they could make maybe make changes or something. But you're right. Like right now, we don't know. We're as Jen said, they reworked their budget to the tune of $15,000 for us, where on our aid reduction we changed. It was about $600,000 difference for us. So that's a big swing, and it feels like we're eating the whole swing. So that's the part that has us concerned. But again, like I said, there could be good news coming. So I'm not going to play gloom and doom here, but those are concerns that Kathy has, that Jen and I certainly struggle with, because like if we're dedicated to keeping this budget whole, because BOCES has to pay their people and run their programs, and our kids may not even receive the credits, the educational credits that go along with that program, because we may not be in session, but we still pay that. And yet over here, we have reduction, which could happen. I'm not saying it is going to happen. How does that play out for the kids that are going to Beekmantown day in and day out? So it's a tough situation we're in.
Has there been any consideration with their budget? I mean, when was the budget completed for them and had to be was it prior to all this or in the midst of this?
So it was basically prior to all this. And then I know the question was asked, can you rework your budget? And I think the answer was maybe they weren't going to do that, but then they did go back to the BOCES board, and the board did put in a lower budget. And I think that's what Jen, you had conversations on the lower budget. Why don't you just take that again and give us a recap?
Yeah, they did go back and look at their budgets, and they sent out revised, quote unquote, revised as of April 2nd was their reduced administrative costs. So that's what we came back to us. I think the cut for us was right between $15,000 and $20,000 for Beekmantown, but every other school, every school is different. So, and that was the complaint at our business officials meeting, was that we're looking, our reduction was, like Dan said, $600,000, and BOCES gave us a $15,000 or $20,000 reduction. So that's what everybody's frustration was based upon last week.
Okay, sorry, I've heard part of that earlier, but I'm trying to manage 3 different things at once right now, so I apologize. So is there a way for them to revisit? This has continued for another month. The economic impact has only gotten worse. And so is there a way for them to revisit this, or no? Or can there be something put in that this is going to have to be revisited once the schools get their budgets? Because how can that's a little dime in a pool of, a lot of money.
That's $15,000 equals one aide in our district,
Right.
approximately.
And I'm all for supporting CV Tech and BOCES and everything. I don't know, this is not something that's happened before, I guess. And that uncertainty is scary for any district. So I guess I don't know. I don't know what to say.
So we have voted no before, and I think these are extenuating circumstances. And I think to Kathy's point and to Dan's point, we're placing a lot of trust in the word tentative, and we're placing a lot of hope in the fact that BOCES will share our pain. So if enough school districts voted down, will they go back to the negotiating table, or will they go back and rework their budget? I don't know what the sentiment is across other school districts, but we all get one vote. I don't know.
Ed, you were talking a little bit about the sentiment of the board.
Yeah, everyone's really scared about the impact, revisiting the impact that you experienced when you were there. Everybody's worried that there is going to be no way around having to do a significant staff layoff, right? That's what happened before when we came across this budget crisis. But it's something that's necessary, and just like CVS cut the aviation program because there wasn't enough enrollment and it was costing too much as money as donation has been put into it, they have had the wherewithal to cut where they have to. They know they do. They don't hire anymore when you can get rid of people when people leave out of attrition. I think I've gotten much more confident with the finances, with Eric and Christine there. And at the end of the day, we're in charge. I think the questions that Nicole asked are well presented. Every year we address this because their budget cycle is different than ours. Every year we address it this year. And just so Nicole knows, if we choose not to send students, typically we keep that money, right? And the budget gets reverted, but it does have an administrative impact. This 5-year averaging cycle is something that we have to look at. And I think all these questions are good, and we need to be ready to present them, because even if the budget does pass entirely, let's say we vote it down and it gets passed anyway, we still need to be prepared to have a mechanism for you guys to give me the feedback to go to the table. Like when you guys feel that is disproportionate, I need to know this as soon as possible so I can go to the board and say, look, this is the feedback. It's disproportionate, or the business staff feels it's disproportionate. Because even if the budget passes, we have to figure out a mechanism to go to the BOCES board table and be able to address that there. So whether we vote yes or no, and the vote passes in its entirety with the rest of the school districts, we still have to address the problem.
All right. Do we have any more questions or discussion concerning the CV Tech budget, or would we like to proceed with the vote at this time? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I have nothing more.
Okay. So would we like to proceed with a vote, or do we have more discussion?
When are we anticipated to know more from the governor? I mean, I don't know what the timeline is, but this is continued through May 15th. We don't know what's going to happen after that. So we're not going to have any answers on our budget anytime soon, correct?
So the way it's scheduled to work this year is the governor or the Office of Budget should be giving us some indication of what the problem is in terms of revenues. They have tweeted and put out in this press conferences to expect more significant cuts to education. We should know the first wave of that happens right around May 1st. Jen, is that the date you have for the first wave, right around May 1st, May 15th?
April 30th is
Yeah, I
the,
have-
30th.
yeah, first day.
Okay. So, and then this is totally unique. Now, this has never happened before. There once or twice before there's been mid-year cuts, halfway through the year cuts. This particular year, due to this fiscal crisis, the governor says he's going to come in quarterly and let everybody know what the revenues look like and make adjustments to everybody's budgets and do it relatively equally. And as education's 27% of the state budget, that's why we could expect, if the revenues are way down, every quarter, you could expect, a significant cut, because a $250 million, which is 27% of $1 billion is a lot of money. So
Dan,
we'll know in May where we are right now, and then we have to, a best practice, as most associations and lawyers are looking at, is to build in some kind of buffer, so that we talked about this at the other board meeting, so that if there's a cut in the other 2 quarters, you're not left saying, okay, we can't have algebra anymore, we can't have whatever anymore, and then kids are halfway through a year, and then you got to find a place to put them, and you're exiting programs or personnel out the door. So that's why you have to actually take where we are in early May, and then add a buffer, a logical buffer to help get you through the year with as less an impact to the personnel and the programs. Does that make sense to everybody? That's for us. That's for Beekmantown and most school districts.
So when are we supposed to vote on this budget as a community?
What budget, Ed? Your budget?
Our Beekmantown budget. How's that cycle?
The
gonna get
CV Tech
changed?
budget?
No.
Beekman County.
The Beekmantown
Yeah,
budget.
so they haven't been exceptionally clear on that. Most people are and they haven't said how we're going to vote on it. So there's a lot of different proposals that we put forward to the state for them to consider. Do we do all absentee ballots? Does just the board vote like most other legislative bodies? They don't have a public vote. We know school districts do. And most people are thinking it's going to be June 9th. Don't hold me to that, because that's not my decision.
Sure.
But I keep hearing June 9th as a day when we vote somehow on our budget. Jen, is that the date you keep hearing?
I haven't even heard a date, because they have to work backwards, and we need 45 days to work backwards. So I think the earliest it'll be is June 9th. Yeah.
Hope that helped.
All right.
So I have a question. Really quick. Can everyone hear me?
Please do.
So state aid, does it affect BOCES the same way it would affect each individual school district? Say, maybe that's a silly question, but BOCES seems like they depend more on our contributions than, but maybe I have that wrong. Like, because we're very nervous about the state aid. I'm just wondering if BOCES falls into the same.
No. Yeah.
See, that's
good question, Mark. The way I understand it, and I'm sure Eric and Christine, who are experts on this, they truly are experts on this, might look at it a little bit differently and probably better. But the BOCES relies on their budget, which is passed by the local school districts. And Ed, let me know if you think this is wrong. It's a good question. I haven't really ever tried to answer this before. but they rely on the local school districts, and they receive their money. Their budget comes from us. Our budget comes from our taxpayers and our state aid. So they don't have they have some grants and they have some other revenues that come in, but their budget isn't dependent on state aid. It's dependent on essentially this vote. I is one way to look at it. And they receive the money from us. Our money might go up or down this year because of what I just described, but that's the so they're not overly dependent on state aid unless you look at it. They are overly dependent on their component districts for sure.
Yeah, we're in complete control. We drive everything.
We being who,
The
Ed?
districts. They depended entirely on us.
Right.
As an example, what's difficult for them is administrative, and Dan had a good point about the administrative budget and how that impacts us separately. So we have a portion of administrative budget that gets shared also with the rest of the school districts. What becomes difficult or changes for them is, let's say that Beekmantown or some school district were to commit 15 students to a CV Tech program. And so they budget for the staff, the budget for everything, and they spread that budget around all the school districts. And then suddenly a school district chooses not to, for some reason they got it wrong and they didn't send but 2 kids. Suddenly that administrative staffing cost is usually still there unless they cancel the class, right? Then it doesn't matter. But if they have to keep the staff because enough school districts have students there, then now the proportion of admin budget stays high compared to the amount of students that went because people pulled out. That's the difficulty of that part. But when it comes to the overall dollars that they're getting, they get from us, and we're in control of that amount of money. And by default, by state aid.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add or ask? All right, are we ready to vote on this? Can you guys hear me?
I don't know if Doug's question got answered. It's in the chat.
Oh, it's all right. I doesn't matter. We've already beat
Oh,
that
so-
horse to death.
I didn't see it.
It says, so can we ask Davy and Bell about the tentative budget and shared proportional cuts?
That's a good question.
Because I'm voting no on this thing until we. There is no doubt
I
those
wish
2
we could,
guys
Doug.
put tentative in here for a reason.
Yeah.
There is no doubt in my mind. So I'm voting no
Either
until tentative is taken out of there and they have a definite amount, or we can get some type of guarantees that Beekmantown's obviously the biggest district is not going to be burdened with their issues.
Does anybody have a problem with? Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to say, to Doug's point, and to Jen's point, really, $15,000 on $600,000 is not fair. The way that it's just it doesn't add up in my mind.
It's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, like you said, it's a student aid salary, right? So, and with us being dependent so much on state, and the state is in flux, how can we really give an honest vote here? You know what I mean? With them not looking in the mirror and sharing some burden or readjusting, like you said, they need to probably go back to the table if enough districts vote no. So I'm a comfortable no with
that. Mark, I mean, that is a big concern. Jen, so out of the total budget, you're saying that they only cut $15,000 out of the total budget.
The exact number, I went back and got the exact number. The exact number was $18,346 for us.
Okay. And so, yeah,
Jen, that's the recalibration from their first budget they put forward to this. Is
Correct.
that the recalibration after they had made recalibrations? So health insurance came in lower than most people anticipated. They had originally built 10% increase or something, 8 to 10% increase into their budget. Is this the second recalibration, or is this the only recalibration? Do you know?
This was the final one. So this was the one updated on 4/2.
Do you know if there was any other updates?
I don't know. I don't think there was any other revisions. I think they had already included the health insurance the first time they sent out numbers. So the first time they sent out numbers was their draft.
Right. That had a higher health insurance number in there in the draft.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I know this reduction was the last one that Eric just did, like I said, a couple weeks ago. And that was after they went back and took a look after kind of everything happened. And like I said, our exact figure, I went back and looked, it's $18,346 of the administrative costs that went down.
So their budget is basically staying put until we know what's happening with the state. Dan, has our budget been adjusted yet?
Has our budget been adjusted yet? So we are working on, Jen and I and the principals are working on getting me potential reductions, and we're working on the budget every single day. We will bring something to the board of education. We certainly don't know our timelines right now.
Right.
And we, I don't want to put together a budget on a number right now and then find out that we have.
And I'm not asking you, but basically what we're saying is that we're being prepared.
Yep.
But we have our current budget until further notice, right?
Right. Absolutely. Right.
And I think that they're in the same place. They have their budget like we have now until further notice. So I think it's difficult to penalize them for an attrition budget without their information from us in the state. I mean, we're saying that they should have cut more proportionally, but we haven't cut anything yet because we don't know either.
We haven't. I wouldn't say that. Like we haven't cut anything yet because we're not in a new budget cycle. But
we don't know. We don't know what the state's not going to give us. So we can't until. I mean, if everything goes smooth like we thought it would, then we're going to keep our budget the way it is, right?
What do you mean by the way it is?
If we get the aid that we thought we were going to get, our budget wouldn't change.
1.4.
We're negative 1.4 million, and then we have to build in a buffer on what I just described.
Well, right. But what I'm getting
negative 2.5 million.
What I'm getting at is we're not changing the budget yet until we get information from the state. We're not going to change the budget until we get information from the state. So from me as a board member, we're trusting you guys to give us the information to make decisions on once we get information from the state. And so I guess it comes down to a situation of trust. I think there's great concerns. Everybody has great concerns about what's going on with BOCES. And I do too. But at the end of the day, I have to trust that Eric and Christine and Mark, Dr. Davey are going to do what's right, just like the community is trusting us to do what's right with our budget, with the unknowns in hand, right? I mean, we haven't put forward a budget, an attrition or contingency budget yet because we don't know what's happening with the state. So I think it's unfair to tell BOCES, well, you should have cut 30% when we haven't done it yet because we're not sure.
I think I feel very uncomfortable voting on a basis of trust. I trust that CV Tech will do what is right for them. And I think Beekmantown Central District needs to do what's right for the information that we have for us. I would love nothing more than to give CV Tech or BOCES exactly what they could. But we have so much doubt and fear within our own budget that I feel uncomfortable making a decision for giving dollars and taxpayers another school until I know what's going on with our own district. So using trust as a philosophy for voting makes me feel very uncomfortable because I don't even trust the information we have for our own district.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair that both, given this situation, like nationally, globally, I don't think it's fair that they have to put their budget in and be locked into something that that's going to change based on what happens with all the school budgets. How can we promise? Nobody's going to want to promise anything when we don't know anything. We don't know how bad it could be or how good it could be. And there's always going to be a level of unknowns. And I put my trust in people who are making those big decisions. Look, we're sitting here doing it right now. But I guess until there's a little more information, why I don't think it's fair that CV Tech should have to force their budget, put that through right now. I think there should be an unprecedented, extenuating circumstance to let this kind of go for a little bit. So I'm not comfortable until we have more information, I guess is what I'm saying. Not that I want to take anything away from CV Tech, but this is just not something where anybody was ever going to be prepared for.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And maybe that's why the word tentative is there, but it's enough. It is vague enough where it causes this kind of confusion.
Well, let me just add to that. And I appreciate Julian Menard giving me some information here. The last 2 years, the word tentative was in the resolution.
Oh, okay.
So it's not new to this year. We would have done research on that. I didn't know that was going to be the word. That particular word was a sticking point. Going to be.
For me, the question becomes: can we change something? Can something be changed along the way, or is this completely locked? Because given this extenuating circumstance, if we were to approve it, can we go later on and be like, hey, because we're being told quarterly from the governor what we're going to get? How can we? How can you? It's not fair to lose every people that we have at school and CV Tech to stay the same. Absolutely. That's just not. I'm not putting it in very professional terms, I guess, but I just don't feel comfortable with that kind of budget and with the situation the way it is.
I think we have that problem every year, Nicole. This year's more aggressive. Every year we have that same problem. We don't know what we're going to get from the state, but we have to vote on this ahead of time anyway, right?
I think there's generally a better idea.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think it's like this is just asking us to, pull something out of our, it just.
It's a valid concern, and I think it's a concern shared all the way around. And it's this year's more, it's stronger, right? It has a bigger impact, potential impact. It's less secure. So I'm with you on that. Yeah.
It's hard to feel that way because you've got everybody in their own, not even only in a big district, but in your own households where you're feeling that uncertainty. So it certainly goes across the board for sure. Sorry.
I also had a text into Mr. Davey, Dr. Davey, 5 minutes ago to see if he could join us. I didn't know whether you guys wanted that. I have not heard back from him. Again, it was only 5 minutes ago.
Have you tried Eric?
Ken.
A question. Historically, Beekmantown has voted yes and no in the past. Our no's come from concern over healthcare increases, administrative fees, things of that nature. Just trying to get a
there was a no. I think a year or two before I arrived, it was on same idea, economic crisis in the district, a lot of cuts, and there was a no vote by Beekmantown. Very few other districts ever vote no. We voted no the most. And then one of the years I was here, it was the same. Early on, it was one of the same ideas, where it was a large. We were. There was gap elimination adjustment year, I believe, where we had a pretty big deficit in state aid, and we weren't cutting, but we were maybe concerned. Ed, you were there. Kathy, you were there. I think we were concerned about the admin budget increase back then. Is that right? Do you remember? Do you recall, Ed?
Yeah, it was exactly that. And so one of the struggles we've always had is separating out the actual admin overhead from the insurance increase, because it's always presented with the admin. So sometimes it gives a flavor that it's personnel when it's insurance and other things. But to Dan's point, when we voted it down, and Kathy and I were both on it, it was because we were concerned not about the insurance, but about the level of top heaviness that CVS had at the time. Since then, a lot has changed with Dr. Davey coming in and Eric coming in, and they've, people have retired. They have reorganized to keep that admin budget as low as possible. So whereas before I was less confident with the control of the finances there, recently my confidence is much higher.
Yeah, I want to point out, and I know we all like Eric and Dr. Davey, but I've always had great confidence in Christine Myers there too. So who's run the numbers? So I never thought we were getting faulty numbers at all. Hey, Eric is available. I don't know if Gary's still here. I don't know if he can call in, or I can certainly call him on my phone and have this kind of scenario here.
If you like, Dan, I can send him the link and he can join us like any other, anybody else, if that would be preferable.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Let me just send him an email. Do you have is he ebell@cvs.org?
That sounds right.
Okay, I just sent that. If that's not the correct email address, we'll find out pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's not correct.
Oh, okay.
It's Bell_Eric.
Okay, at cvs.org.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, I just sent that to him again. And when he pops in, I'll approve him to join.
So Nicole, I have a question for you. I noticed you have a superhero running around in the background.
Yes, his name is Flash.
That's awesome.
And like I said, I'm trying to multitask and it's not going well this morning.
It is wonderful.
He tries to hide behind me and he tries to run fast and yeah.
Enjoy the moment.
And he does, I watch.
I miss those days.
I
miss those days.
Right now I'm gonna probably furlough from my job for a little while so that I can be home to provide some consistency with the schooling, because right now it is just it's juggling.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I don't mind being away from work for 30 days.
You're juggling, but enjoy it. Tomorrow, my son turns 18.
Yeah, I'm trying to enjoy it. There's moments where I don't.
I know my wife Ricky, she's on the school stuff all day with the kids.
Well,
Just
one
to
of
make
them just
sure.
had a Google Meet, a speech session that didn't go very well because he's Flash and he just can't get out of costume. So,
He's completely in character.
oh yeah, he takes it very seriously.
You know what though? I've enjoyed the variety that the teachers have put into some of these exercises. We had a day where we did a tent right in the living room, and I enjoyed it. I was in it, you know, and that was a lot of fun to see the teachers think out of the box and be creative with what the kids are doing. It's a lot of fun. I think they're doing a great job of adjusting to the situation and modifying class lessons to make them a lot of fun.
I have definitely taken to the home life more for sure. Like I'm actually starting to enjoy it, and my creative mind is starting to come out.
So are we having
I
any
have a
luck
question.
connecting Eric Bell?
Yeah, I got to admit to guys, this is running way longer than I anticipated. I can't be staying on this for all day. And don't take this the wrong way, but I actually have to work. So I don't know if we're going to have a vote or if we're going to talk about this for another half an hour or what's our deal here. I know we're trying to get Bell on the line, but what he has to say, honestly, doesn't really, in my opinion, and what he says and what's on that paper are two different things. So I don't know if you need me present for my vote, but my vote is going to be no.
So yeah, you'd have to be present, and if we are going to vote, so right now I see we have 1, 2, 3, 6 board members, and there'll probably be a roll call vote on this. If you're going to vote now, we are trying to connect with Eric. I don't know. I can call.
Are all school districts meeting around the same time, or do we have any of those meetings on public record yet? Do we?
They all meet today.
Okay.
I just texted Eric to see if he got the email, and he said he has to download the right browser because he's calling in. He just texted he's calling in.
Okay.
So I'll make sure that he's unmuted.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, he just joined.
So I think he just joined.
Hello, this is Eric Bell from CBS.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning. Sorry,
Eric, we are
the link.
That's okay. We're having quite an intense conversation concerning approval or disapproval of the budget for CVS.
Okay.
So before we actually make a decision, we're looking for clarification of information. So if anyone has a question concerning the CV Tech budget, would you please ask Mr. Bell now?
Let me just start with one, Kathy. Eric and Joanne helped us and pointed out that the word tentative has been in there the last 2 years. That caught a couple of people's attention. I didn't know going into the meeting that I would have had the answer. The word tentative is there because.
Yep, our board approves our budget in May. So our board reviews our budget in February. That way we can get information out to the board as well as the component district superintendent. So we get a tentative approval from our board in February. That way we can roll out our budget book so everyone can see that. But our board does not formally approve our budget until May. And you guys are voting on the administrative portion of this budget. Once that goes through, if all the majority of the component boards do pass it, we then move to our board level to then make the final approval of that admin budget. If the majority of the boards voted down, we then move to contingency, and our board would then approve that admin portion of our budget.
Another question that point of discussion that was brought up was you guys had an original budget, and then COVID hit, and I think health insurance was modified downward after your original budget. And I think, and correct me if we are wrong here, you've gone back once, or did you go back twice to give us a new budget? Was it just once, or was it twice, Eric?
So it ended up being twice,
Right.
Reduced a second time. So the first reduction happened around March 1st.
And that was because of health insurance, correct?
Yep. And then the second reduction was around the end of March, early April timeframe, due to the financial situation going on in New York State. We made attempts to make it some additional cuts, and we did get the blessing from our board at our April board meeting on those additional cuts. So those would have been released right after our April board meeting, which was April 8th. Then we released it to school districts on April 9th.
Okay. One other point of conversation was BOCES aid ratios and the number of students you sent to CV Tech, not special education branch. And with the averaging, let's just say our number is 80, just for an easy number to work with, somewhere right around there. If we sent 85 kids, we pay one rate. If we sent 27 kids, and that's just to kind of showcase a difference here, we're still going to pay the same amount this year that we're budgeted to pay, and then in subsequent years that lower number gets wrapped into the average. So we don't have an offset based on the number of kids that actually attend CV Tech this year. Is that the way it would work?
Yeah, so our 5-year enrollment averaging methodology is that the rate for the 2020-2021 year is based on 2015-16 school year all the way through the 2019-20 school year. Numbers, take all 5 of them, add them up, divide them by 5, take the average. Beekmantown's average is 74.96 in that 5-year window. Current year student count is 78. So we don't know at this time what your enrollment will look like next year. So we'll be paying for 74.96 students based on the 5-year enrollment averaging. If you send 80 or part of your formula, you have an 87 in there. So if you sent similar to a year where you sent 87, you still would pay 75. If you sent 70, you still would pay 75. That's how the averaging does work. Whatever your number is will go into your formula next year and be with you for 5 years. So if your number is lower or higher, that does stay with you for 5 years, and over time it will be calculated into your annual cost.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Eric, this is Ed.
Hey, Ed.
So the real concern here at our table is that the inconsistencies with understanding what state aid we're going to get at the district level has made it difficult for anybody to have confidence with respect to apportioning money to the CVS budget without knowing what we're going to get ourselves. So what we're trying to understand is if we vote on this, someone mentioned, what is our safeguard that if we get cut 30%, that we can't go back and address the CVS budget?
Yeah, so right now what we've, I guess let's start with the services we provide. You're not voting on it at this time, but I know it's a concern of the board, our CVS board, as represented by you, Ed, and what we look at is what does it take to provide a service, and typically what you see in a BOCES is our cuts happen when districts pull back services from a BOCES. So we have to provide a rate based on the employees that we have. And if you would like to have a service, for example, speech services that we're providing, we may have 3 speech individuals. And if districts pull back services, our lowest person will leave. However, our employees are our employees, and if districts want to send their students here, our rates are set on who our employees are. So we have 3 individuals, we know their exact cost. We pass that rate on to districts to pay if they would like speech services. Obviously, if there are pullbacks, we then would lay off our lowest person. As far as what you're voting on today, that is our admin budget. That is we talk about it quite often, is about $5 million of what you're voting on is retirees. $4.5 million of what you're voting on today is our retiree health insurance cost. And we realize as a BOCES that needs to be addressed. And our board gave authorization for us to aggressively negotiate with our unions to put in contributions in retirement for health insurance. That way we can, 1, deter individuals from just taking health insurance because it's free, 2, share in some of that cost for the health insurance. So our BOCES realize that Beekmantown needs relief from our admin budget, and we have taken steps already, and we continue to focus on taking cost mitigating steps to help with future budgets. The portion increasing, so for example, I guess what we like to talk about is if we go to contingency, what does that impact? So if our boards, our component school districts are to vote it down somewhere, if your taxpayers vote down your budget, what are you going to do? For us, it's our cost of the 602 health insurance and workers' comp consortium increase to the BOCES. It is that just over $30,000 share for CVS on that. That is our increase that's built into our budget. So if our budget does go down, our contingency is a $30,000 reduction in our administrative budget. So that is what you're voting on today. So what I would say is that our focus right now is looking at all of our budgets, which don't get finalized till May 9th. You're not voting on all of them, but what I can tell you is that we are looking at every single one of our coasters to see where we can find savings for our districts. And like Mr. Mannix referenced, we've already gone back twice to make cuts, potentially outside of the admin budget. We're also looking at other coasters and other areas where we can help and assist our school districts during these tough financial times. We really feel that across the state, an important piece of this is BOCES and what BOCES can do for school districts to find cost efficiencies while also returning aid in a future year when aid's going to be tough. This isn't a 1-year challenge. This is going to be a 3 or 4 year challenge. And it's on the BOCES to step up and provide high quality, cost efficient services for our school districts. And that's what our focus is right now.
Dan, Eric, so from our perspective, what is our insurance that, let's say we vote on this admin budget and it goes forward, and we get a significant 30-40% cut from the state, and how do we go back and address reducing the admin budget that we voted on already?
So the admin budget, that's the challenging piece of it, is that 90% of our admin budget, or close to 90% of our admin budget, is retiree health insurance. So we don't have the ability to just go and remove retirees off of our budget.
So you're saying that 90% of what we're voting on today is retiree health insurance?
It's between 80 and 90%.
Okay, well that's a good piece of information to have. All right, and then the rest, how will we address the other left 10?
Can I just dovetail something onto that? Yeah. So that's what we are voting on today, but the discussion is, because we don't really have voting rights like the board does, is if we have a large BOCES expenditure. You'd agree with that, right, Eric? A large BOCES expenditure.
The Beekmantown has what?
We pay in a lot of money every year into BOCES, right? Whether admin budget, kids going, programs.
Yeah, when I was there, it typically ranged from $2.5 million to $3.2 million, I believe, when I was there.
Okay.
Yep.
So what maybe the whole board is concerned about is, yes, we have this admin budget, which we are concerned about, but we're really concerned about Beekmantown and not knowing where we're going to stand. And the word trust has been thrown out there, and everybody wants to trust. I think we do trust you, Eric. But if we were to lose 30% is the only area which may be modified is just the admin budget, or would you be looking across the board to make modifications to share in that pain that Beekmantown would be in?
I can say that we've already begun to look across the board. The admin budget, that second cut was solely on the admin budget. So we went in and we knew that was the pressing one. I know our superintendents, and Dan, you were one of them that said we need to get your updated numbers. So we focused on that one, got that out to our board at the April meeting, and that was our priority place to reduce that budget in advance of this vote that's happening today. The next step of this is the full analysis of all of our COSERs, and we understand the need to give our districts relief, and it is something that we are analyzing right now, and that would be something that we'd be presenting at our May board meeting to our board, and Ed will be there, and I really welcome the discussion, and Ed, and bring back any feedback from your board members at Beekmantown, and having those discussions of where can we find savings. And I can tell you, those COSER rates, some of them are set. You know, like I spoke about, those people are there. There's maybe 2 people in a certain COSER. If people want the service, we have to hire those 2 people. There's not much flexibility. That's I guess the challenge of being in a BOCES. But where we can find flexibility and cut costs, we are analyzing each and every one of our COSERs right now to see.
Eric, are you still there? I think we lost Eric.
Well, and so based on what I heard, if 90% of what we're voting on today is something that's not, it's not going to get impacted by the state aid reduction or whatever reduction we get anyway, then that issue is a separate issue that we'd have to address separately at CVS. So, I mean, I've been inclined to vote a yes on it and work with Eric since we have till next month to vote on everything else.
Okay, welcome back,
Sorry
Eric.
about that. I'm not sure where I left off, but I think Gary pulled the plug. He had heard enough.
Not true, Eric. Wouldn't do that to you.
Okay. President Buckley, any other questions? I'm happy to answer anything that the board has. Dan has my cell phone, can call me 24/7. Jen Parliament as well. Very close working relationship with her. Fantastic team at Beekmantown. Happy to answer any questions you guys have anytime.
Right. One of our grave concerns is the fact that we have absolutely almost no understanding of how our budget is going to work at this point. Not to mention every quarter that could change. I will say the word tentative in this resolution, even though it has shown up in the past, is particularly terrifying, being that our aid from New York State could change quarterly. And basing on what I was reading through your budget last night, BOCES did a revision of their budget mid-year, and they were all increases. And I'm really very, very concerned that as a district that if we are to approve the budget, your budget today, we could actually receive less funding quarterly, and the possibility of revision during next year is a likelihood. It makes me feel very, very insecure.
Yeah, President Buckley, thank you for your concern and an opportunity to answer it. One of the protections that you do have is that, for like example, our current year, And for next year as well, whatever this budget amount is, for the
Wish I
admin.
had projections of revisions. I can't hear you, Eric.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
President Buckley, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So the admin budget that is set today and approved by our board in May, we cannot exceed that in the year. So that we cannot go over that amount. Similar to you when you set your tax levies and you vote on your budget, or if you do a capital project, you're set at that level. You can't go over. So you do have that protection built in there as far as our inability to go over the amount that you are approving today. Also, if there are any savings within our budget or our admin budget, and as we go through the year, there are two options in the BOCES, and it's really dictated by our board, and it actually goes to the board level for discussion. So Ed will be involved in every single one of these discussions, and that is we can amend rate in the middle of the year, which typically doesn't happen because boards, your budgets are set in a local district. In a year where they aren't set, we can begin to have conversations. Instead of waiting for surplus, we can ask districts, do you want us to amend rate? So we've had, just for example, last year, just under $1 million surplus. The year before it was just over $2 million that went back to districts. What we could do during the year is we can amend rate if we have a favorable budget situation. And then that would just reduce the district's billing during the year. That is an option we have, and that's an option we typically would discuss with the superintendents and then at our board level if that's something that our superintendents are interested in. If not, then typically what it would just do is you get that surplus check in the following fall. So there are conversations we can have if there are mid-year decreases, we can start to dive into some of our different coasters and budgets and discuss with our superintendents. So we want to amend rate at some point in the middle of our year. And then if the superintendents have appetite for it, we would bring it to our board level for a discussion and potential action on that.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any questions concerning this CV Tech administrative budget? Chris? Mark? Nicole? I have all microphones off and all my screens are
I have
frozen.
nothing more. Thank you for joining us, Eric.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so.
Can you hear me now, Kathy?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Do you, Nicole, have any additional questions or concerns for Mr. Bell?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you very much for Mr. Beebe. Do you have any questions for Mr. Bell?
I'm all set. Thanks.
Okay. All right. I think we're set. Are we ready for a roll call vote? Okay. Eric, do you want to stay on for the vote or are you?
I'll stay on, President
off?
Buck. I'll stay on. If there's any questions, I'll be here. Okay, just let me know.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Shake your heads. Yes. No. We're all set. Okay. All right, Joanne, would you please, now that we finish our discussion, could we please have a roll call vote?
Right, you're voting on to approve the budget. That's the motion on the floor. Douglas Beebe?
No.
Kathy Buckley?
No.
Michael Hagedorn left the meeting. Ed Marin?
Yes.
Christopher Michaud?
No.
Krista Palmer left the meeting. Nicole Pupor?
No.
Mark Sand?
No.
And Pauline Stone is absent.
All right. The resolution to pass the hold on, let me get my agenda. The resolution to pass the CV Tech administrative budget fails. All right. May it be resolved that education meeting be adjourned. May I have a motion, please?
Kathy, there's a one more resolution.
I wanted my classmates for a play date.
There's
Oh,
one more
I'm so
resolution.
sorry. May it be resolved that the Board of Education of Beekmantown Central School District is facing budget challenge for the 2020-2021 budget and most likely the 2021-2022 budget. As a means to limit layoffs, save programs, and enhance our financial status, the board authorizes the superintendent of schools to petition the New York State legislators and/or NYSET to approve and/or agree to an early retirement incentive. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Motion by Christopher.
Second.
May I have a second? That was by Ed. Questions or discussion? Mr. Manick, being that we do have some new board members, can you give a quick explanation of the goal of this resolution?
Sure. I've done a little bit of research on early retirement incentives, and back in the last economic crisis, I think it was 2010, the state offered an early retirement incentive, and the state was able to save tens of millions of dollars. So, in districts, they're able to save, especially if you are working from an attrition standpoint, where a position may not be filled for a little bit of time. That could be a large savings. If you have a position that somebody retires and you need to fill it, that sometimes is a break even or a very small savings. My understanding when I reached out to NYSET was they're more reactive than they are proactive. So it was brought to my attention that if we went to them and said, hey, we may be interested in this, they may put more pressure. They may put their political pressure on the legislature to offer this as well. Now, we could offer one locally. It certainly helps when the state says, we'll give you service credit at the state level or whatever. And so they have different types of incentives that they've offered. So this is just by you passing this resolution, it allows me to look into this option, but also to ask other associations to push their power forward to maybe help Beekmantown offer this. So there's nothing I have done or any agreements that would come out in the next couple of days, but it would allow us to really start pushing this forward, because this could really help this year or next year or for a number of years.
Does anyone have any additional questions?
No.
Okay. No. Did you have a question, Mark?
No, sorry.
Okay. Okay. All right. May I have an all in favor?
Aye.
Wait, before we go, Doug, do you have a question concerning Mr. Manick's working towards an early retirement incentive to alleviate budget? Yes. Okay, thank you. All right. May I have an all in favor, please?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Noes, abstains. Resolution passes. I'm really sorry to you guys that this meeting took so long, but I think we really did have some important, meaningful discussion. I think we all have a better understanding of how we feel about the future and the concern that we have for our district. So I want to thank you very much for staying on this extended time. May it be resolved that the Board of Education meeting be adjourned. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Okay, I've got two at the same time. Christopher, you want a motion? Nicole, did you want a second?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. We go Christopher, then Nicole for second. In favor? Aye.
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 All right, excellent. Thank you. Noes, abstains, resolution passes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Good talking to you.
Take
Have a
care,
good
Eric.
day.
Eric, are you?
Yeah, bye.
All right. All right.
Stay
Good
safe.
luck, Eric.
Thank you. You too.
Okay.